If you've never done a full gut rehab, don't buy one right now. If it is a shaky deal and it's just tight, what would it be to not make it tight? Do you drop it $5,000? Do you drop it 10? And if that doesn't work, move on to the next deal, because this isn't the market that you want to get in a situation where you bought for more than you should have.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. Hello and welcome to episode 241. My guests today know what it's like to go through a major economic downturn and reposition their business in order to survive and thrive. Jason Roberts and Rachel Schneider owned their own mortgage company when the Great Recession hit back in 2008. Once the market crashed, they pivoted to real estate investing and have since closed over 300 transactions. Many of them were pre-foreclosures, short sales, wholesales, probates. You name it, they have done it. Now that the coronavirus has brought our economy into another likely recession, it will be helpful to get Jason and Rachel's perspective on how they plan to survive and thrive once again. Jason and Rachel run a top coaching program where they share their knowledge and experience with other investors. And they also own a profitable hard money lending company with over $2 million in loans out at any given time. They're also co-owners of their local REIA, and they continue to flip houses. Jason and Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Why don't we start with going back to before the last Great Recession? You guys are partners, and you owned your own mortgage company. Does this feel like what we're going through now? Does it feel like deja vu to you, or is it something totally different?
It's eerily familiar for me. All the same signs are there. The feelings are there. While we were going through what we went through before, and it didn't mention in my bio, but I filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I lost my own home to foreclosure, cars repossessed. It was, when I say we went through the downturn, we went through every part of the downturn. And while it was one of the most painful things that I had ever been through in my entire life, I also learned more from that experience than anything I ever learned before also. And one of the big lessons that I got out of that was, I had all these smart CPAs and lawyers and accountants telling me, you need debt, you need expenses, you need write-offs, you need all of these things. And like a highly leveraged rental portfolio, that all looks good on paper until something shifts or until something changes. And something changed. And we went from bringing in a lot of money every month to losing money every month. And I would say one of the biggest things that I got out of that was that debt isn't for me, or at least highly leveraged debt isn't for me. And so while it feels very much the same, and I'm seeing a lot of the same things happen, thankfully we are in a different financial position that, yes, we need to adapt. Yes, we need to shift. Yes, we need to change. And we're looking at this. How can we view this as an opportunity to grow more or serve more or help more? But it's without the same stress that we went through last time of overhead and payments and how long can we make it like this, type of thoughts.
Rachel, can you kind of help fill us in on what exactly you were doing up until the last Great Recession? How bad did it get for you?
It got real bad. And Jason personally was affected a little bit more than I was because I had an outside income, my husband's income, which of course helped. But it was, everything was amazing until one day you walk into the office and, to put a percentage on it, 75% of the loans that need to fund, not just today, but the next day and the day after that, and for the next month or so, your whole pipeline, those loans don't exist anymore. And they're not going to push money out to any of those people anymore. It really puts you in a position where your hands are completely tied because that wasn't connected. We didn't do anything wrong, right? We didn't not work hard enough. We did not do the right things. I think you can look at it and say, were we more debt heavy than we would ever be today? Absolutely. But that's like the majority of businesses. We're a rarity at the fact that we have zero debt and we got a credit card so we can rental cars when we travel, and so it wasn't a matter of us doing anything wrong that put us in that situation, much like where people are at today. But I'll tell you the lessons from that, like Jason, you said, it feels familiar. I'm excited in a sense. And I know that sounds crazy because there is a lot of uncertainty, but we thrived in an uncertain market before. And so now it's like, well, we just have to hurry up and figure out how to do it again this time. So I know I kind of went away from your question a little bit, but I felt a little bit different about where I think a lot of people are very nervous and very scared. And if you really set yourself up in the right position and you become adaptable and you start to pivot and know that maybe what you were doing 30 days ago won't see you through this, but you're willing to change it. I think that this is a game changer for a lot of people that are in this industry.
That's great to hear you say that. I want to get into why you're excited and how you're repositioning yourselves to seize on any opportunities that we might see coming up here in the future. But I also want to kind of talk about the pivot you guys made after the mortgage business, because I imagine I know people who had a mortgage business leading up to the Great Recession. That didn't go very well, and they had to switch gears. So talk about that period. What did you guys switch to, and how did the Great Recession inform what you did after that?
We really made a transition from, when your hands are tied like that in the mortgage business, right? And you can't do the same types of loans that you were ever able to do, and there's no workaround for it. So you've exhausted all efforts on that side. We then started getting into doing loan modifications, helping a lot of our previous customers that we'd helped to get an actual loan, get their loan modified, because that was a relief program that the government was offering. And Jason, how long would you say that we did that? The loan modifications?
I'd say a good year and a half. It feels like.
I feel like it was about 18 months. And man, when we started, we were so excited about it. I do remember that, right? Like thinking, oh gosh, all of these people that have been calling us wanting to refinance or wanting to do this, we actually have an option for them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. We shortly found out that the majority of the people that we set out to help, we were able to help very few of them. Why
is that? What prevented you from being able to help them?
The bank.
I think that when the government gave that TARP money, and I don't want to get into politics and all that, but I think it was a publicity stunt. I think it was let's get on the news and TV and say that we're helping people. And so it was, banks are getting bailed out. We're giving all this TARP money, and that's supposed to be used to help people who are in trouble. And so for probably the first 6 months, the majority of the loan mods that we turned in got approved. I mean, we helped hundreds of people. I mean, the local news station, TV station did a story on us. I mean, like, we were really, really helping people, and it was awesome. And then just like the mortgage business, it was like lights out. All of a sudden, none of the loan mods were getting approved anymore, and nobody could give us an answer why. And it was a Band-Aid. To me, it was kind of I hate to say publicity stunt, but that's how it felt. Like, let's pretend that we're helping all these people. We'll help some, and then we're going to cut the money off and keep it for ourselves. And that's very much how it felt from this side, because there was no rhyme or reason. There was no explanation. Deals that were getting approved, loan mods that were getting approved yesterday were getting declined today. And like I said, just like in the mortgage world, it was, we had hundreds, if not thousands, of loan mod applications in process at the time. And then out of the blue, just like the mortgage stuff, it was nobody was getting approved anymore. And now, today, 4% of people who apply for a loan mod actually get one. Only 4%.
So what did you guys do from there then? How did you change your business plan at that point?
I will say that was a pretty dark period. We spun into loan mods because that's kind of where the economy was. And then we couldn't help people there anymore either. And that was, my bankruptcy went through in October 2010. Like I said, I lost my own house to foreclosure, cars repoed, you name it. Financially, it was bad. And I don't share that so that the listeners feel sorry for me. I share it because for any of you guys that are new out there, or beginners, or think that you have to have perfect credit, or think that you have to have a ton of money in the bank, or any of those things to get started, I'm just painting the picture of I wasn't any of those things. I was probably in worse shape than the majority of people when we got started in real estate investing. And we actually ended up at 4-day short sale boot camp. I had no idea what real estate investing was. I had no idea what short sales were. And for whatever reason, the guy was teaching this boot camp for free. He'd probably done that event 50 times. He's never, ever done it for free. And the one time he did it for free, thank God he did it for free, because we wouldn't have been there if it cost money, because we didn't have any money. And Rachel and I went and I mean, we just took hundreds of pages of notes. We basically copied his blueprint. He had done 300 or 400 short sale transactions successfully. We were looking at our loan mod pipeline saying, what else could we do to help these people? They're not going to get approved for a loan modification. What else could we do to help them? And, what if we could get them out from under their home? At the time, they might have owed $300,000 on their house that was worth $200,000, right? So they're significantly upside down. They can't get caught up. They want a solution, and short sales, really kind of seemed like it could be that solution.
2 questions, and I want to make sure our audience understands what short sales are. First of all, who was it that was teaching this course?
Sean McCloskey.
Sean McCloskey. Okay.
Yeah.
And then explain what a short sale is and how you were able to go ahead and make those happen for borrowers.
So short sale, really in its simplest form, it's the data you'd be pulling is pre-foreclosure data. That's how you would gain access to this. And short sales, really the way that you acquire that property by working with their lender. So someone owes, $300,000 on their mortgage, but there's no way that you can pay that price. Maybe even the home isn't worth that amount anymore. There's variances there, but you work with their lender. So Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, whoever it is, and you negotiate that they accept about a payoff for less than what's actually owed on the mortgage. So, you could get that $300,000 mortgage to 225 or maybe even 200. There's a lot of different factors that go into how you're able to negotiate that price for lower. But at that time, primarily it was value, right? Because we had seen the market had been so overinflated, and we were seeing it in our mortgage business where these values were just so high. And 6 months later, people had appreciated $30,000 and $40,000 worth of equity, and we're thinking, man, really? Like, that doesn't make sense. There were a lot of bad loans that had been done too for many years. So short sales, really became the solution for the majority that had been financially hurt during that recession. Because
you had the mortgage experience, did that position you better than others to be able to handle the short sale world?
I would say yes, in a sense.
I would say yes too. But I also don't want to confuse it, because it didn't help us to understand real estate investing. It didn't help us to understand after repair value. It didn't help us to understand the mechanics of doing a real estate deal. What it helped us to understand is how to put together an organized file.
Yes.
And for the short sale business, it is very much about, do you have your pay stubs? Do you have your bank statements? Do you have your tax returns? Are the tax returns signed? Are the pay stubs current? Are the bank statements current? And so from a mortgage origination perspective, we had to have all the assets and financials. We had to have recent pay stubs. We couldn't use a 3-month-old bank statement. Everything had to be current. So from that standpoint, it really taught us how to put together a clean file, which I think is why we were able to get so many of them approved when others were struggling, is because we just knew how to put together a clean file. But we didn't understand real estate investing. We didn't really understand values. We didn't really understand how to calculate repairs. We didn't even know that REIAs existed at the time, or that podcasts existed at the time. Like we didn't know how to do this business, but it helped us from an organizational standpoint, I guess.
So at what point did you begin incorporating real estate investing into your strategy?
Right away, from the very beginning, we knew that we had to do something else that created a significant business, because that's where we had came from. And so the minute we left that, which I think we maybe had one or two in the pipeline, Jason, before we actually went to that event, just playing around with it, right? We didn't really know what we were doing. Yeah. And then by the time we left there, we thought, well, we're going to take this and we're going to build it as big as we possibly can. And 2011, we did 111 deals, all real estate investing through short sales. So it was a big year for us.
Now it's interesting because you guys are partners. You were partners in a mortgage business. You became partners in real estate. You're partners in your coaching program. a lot of people would have broken up and found new partners, or there'd be something that would lead them to a completely different path apart from each other. Why is it that you two have remained partners through this entire period?
For me, one of the biggest things is trust, and what she's absolutely brilliant at running a business and putting it. She's brilliant at the things that I am not good at, and it makes a really, really good complementary team. And I remember when the mortgage business was crashing, and we became partners at the tail end of that. But at the time that the mortgage business itself was wiped out, Rachel was running the company, but she wasn't technically a partner. And everyone else was bailing, everyone else was quitting, everyone else was, scrambling to go find an income somewhere else. And I remember having to have the conversation with, I don't know if we had 10 or 12 employees left at the time. And I remember having to have the conversation that you guys probably need to quit now and go look for a job, because in another 2 weeks, your payroll check's going to bounce if you stay here. There's no more money left, which is a really terrible conversation to have with people that you care about. And I remember Rachel looking at me and saying, well, if the ship's going down, then I'm going to go down with it. And she had her own bills. She had her own responsibilities. She didn't have to say that. And for me, that was just kind of a mental shift and a game changer. Like, this person has my back. Like, she is here for it. And I knew in that moment that I wanted to have her as a business partner, that I wanted to grow businesses together with her. So for me, just the trust and loyalty, and knowing that we're going to have each other's back, and we're good at what the other one isn't. It's made for an awesome partnership. That doesn't mean that we never have problems or issues or anything else, but it's fun. I enjoy it. We're able to accomplish 10 times more together than if we were running around on our own. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat-fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com.
Rachel, you sound great. What is it about Jason?
Yeah. Well, he's very right in the fact that our strengths and weaknesses really complement each other. And so that's something that's a huge benefit once we realize those, because in the beginning, we didn't always know that was a good thing. We used to butt heads over it. But I just didn't want to go back to corporate America, right? Like, I had worked that business always as if I had owned it. And so I wasn't able to just say, okay, well, I'm done. Let's give up, right? And I'd seen what we had built together, like he very much ran the loan officers. I very much ran that underwriting side. And I'm like, if we can do this in this situation and look at all what we had was our knowledge, right? That they could never take away from us. So it was like, we just need to put it into something else. And that's what we did. But we have very complementary skills to each other. And I think at the end of the day, we have each other's back, and we're extremely loyal to each other. That you don't find that in a lot of people. And we've built an entire team that is extremely loyal, and we have each other's best interests. I would say take all of the money before I would ever fight over money. And I think people fight about some of the pettiest things in partnerships that are unnecessary.
Well, let's talk about what you've built since then, because I know you've built a successful team, a business, coaching program, but I want to make sure we relate it to the real estate investing and the actionable content that our listeners can get out of that. What are some of the keys to your success since you guys started investing in real estate?
I'll narrow it down to 3, maybe 4 things. And I hope everybody writes this down. Number one thing, if you're going to be successful in business, in real estate specifically, is you have to have a recipe. You have to have a blueprint. You have to know it's not good enough just to have goals and say, I want to be a real estate investor, or I want to flip houses, or I want to be a wholesaler. you really need to have a recipe or a blueprint for your business. What does my business need to do on a daily basis in order to achieve my desired result? I coach guys that are doing 20, 30 flips a month. And I coach some people that just want to do 5 or 6 in a year. Neither one of those is right or wrong, but they're clear on what the target is. And if you're clear on what the target is, we can reverse engineer what the blueprint is that, what needs to be done on a daily basis? How much marketing needs to be sent out on Monday? How many ringless voicemails need to be sent? How many emails? So that first one is a recipe or blueprint for your business. What does the business need to do on a daily basis to get me to my desired result? The second one is massive action. I see people, and you're either one like me that, you jump out of the plane, build your wings on the way down. Like I don't need to know step 7 before I start step 1. And then there's a lot of people that are more engineer minded that need to know step 7 before they start step 1. But if you look at all the people who are ultra successful, they've conditioned themselves to take action even when they're uncertain. And so I would say number 2, massive action. Number 3, I would say, is a mentor or coach. I'm not here to sell mentoring or coaching. That's not why I bring it up. What I say is, look at anybody who's ultra successful at anything. They all have a mentor or coach. Look at any professional athlete. Look at any Olympian. Look at any CEO. They all have someone they can go to. That could be your local REIA. That could be this podcast. It could be a coach that's specific to what you want to do. Whatever it is, find somebody who's already achieving the result that you want and work with them. It'll take light years off your curve. The reason we were able to do 111 deals that first year is because we hired the guy that was teaching that seminar who had done 400 deals already. And we said, just show us what you're doing in your business on a daily basis. So those 3 things, I would think, if you write those down and look for those, have been a game changer for us in creating successful businesses.
Yeah, Rachel, what about you? What do you see as some of the keys to your success so far?
I think being determined. I think there's so many people that, I meet in general or are in this business, and I think they treat it kind of like a hobby a little bit. And I think you can, to an extent. It can be something that you do on the side, but you still need to be determined in your efforts, right? And so I guess what I mostly mean by that is, I sent out some marketing and I did this and I did that and I haven't gotten anything. And I'm like, okay, let's talk when you've done that 50,000 times, right? Because you have to be persistent. You have to be determined. Like, there's nothing that gets in your way when you're trying to achieve that ultimate success. A big part of our business today is live events. Well, we can't do them right now. So we're going to figure something else out. We've done 3 virtual events in the last month, and you've got to pivot, right? You have to try it, but we don't just call it good and say, all right, we're done. We can't do live events. No, we figure out how can we still accomplish the same thing within the abilities that we have right now. And so I think being determined and being committed, not just interested, but absolutely committed.
Now, it sounds like marketing for leads and prospects is a big part of what you guys teach and a big part of your business. Can you talk about that process? What type of marketing are we talking about here?
I think marketing is the key to any successful real estate investing business. And, for Rachel and I, like you said, we did have mortgage experience, but we didn't have real estate investing experience. So when we started, we couldn't take a risk. We couldn't mess up. We couldn't make a mistake because we had nothing to lose. So I think, we kind of taught ourselves from the very beginning. Our recipe was 60% of after repair value minus repairs. That's what we needed to buy at. And that's aggressive. A lot of people will say, well, you can't even do that in this market. And my argument would be, you can't do that in that market if you're marketing by traditional means. If you're getting in front of sellers that 15 other investors have been in front of, you're right. You're not going to get that house for 60% of ARV. But if you employ tactics that the rest of your competition isn't using, if you find sellers that the rest of your competition isn't finding, it can make all the difference in the world. So we use things like skip tracing to find alternate phone numbers for sellers. We use things like ringless voicemail. We use things like locating their Facebook profile and sending them an inbox message to their Facebook profile. We use things like email autoresponders. We are reaching sellers where they're at, as opposed to, what's been taught to real estate investors for the last 20 years, which is direct mail. And direct mail works, but direct mail has a 1% response rate. And what we teach is bringing people in a 10 to 20% response rate. So if you really look at that in the course of your business and say a 1% response rate over 12 months as opposed to a 10 or 15% response rate over 12 months, it makes a night and day difference with the quality of seller that you get in front of them.
Now, how do you see that changing with coronavirus and all that? The direct mailing, the voiceless, or what did you say? The ringless voicemails. Some of these technologies. Is this still working right now during this stay-at-home quarantine phase that we're in?
Yeah, it absolutely is. The ringless voicemail inbound responses and outbound calling is bringing in the highest percentages. And this is not just in our market in Missouri. This is our students. We're key metrics masters. So we are always tracking data, finding out what's working, how is it working, what's the response rate from this, what's the best messaging. And as of just 2 days ago, we had a group call, I guess Friday, maybe Thursday. And those two are bringing in the best response rates right now. One thing I think we'll see change is we are always targeting sellers that have a high need to want to sell, right? I think bandit signs work, but I want to go to someone that there's a high likelihood that they need to get rid of this house, like someone that's in probate or someone that's got a pre-foreclosure or someone who's doing an eviction on someone. What I think we're going to see change, I think our marketing avenues, they're going to stay very strong, the different ways that we communicate with people. But I think what we might see change is the method, the data we're pulling, right? Think of people who are in Airbnb situations right now. Some of them will bounce back and recover and they'll be totally fine. Some of them are going to need to sell properties quickly. Yep. I think people who own apartment buildings who weren't leveraged correctly, they're going to be in need. So I think at these marketing avenues that we use, they work always, right? Some might be pulling better than others at certain times, but I think our data will be looking to change because of COVID-19.
Given what you're saying, it sounds like the techniques you've been using up till now would be worth your while to double down on those techniques because they're going to work even better going forward.
Absolutely.
You mentioned key metrics, Rachel, the key metrics of what's working when trying to contact homeowners or borrowers directly. How has that changed over time? Like what used to work that no longer works and what works great right now? And what do you see working in the future?
I feel like we used to see our mail over the years. Mail is something that has continued to drop lower and lower on the totem pole. I still think it's effective because really what these marketing avenues are, what these metrics are, you're reaching people at their preferred way. So I don't know what's your best way for me to contact you. So I'm just going to try them all and then we'll make contact, right? But mail is one that I see that we've seen drop over the years. And especially as ringless voicemail has become more popular, that is probably one of the highest. But outbound calls, that's always been top. Always. I mean, we could go back to 2011 and outbound calls was always the primary way that we were pulling in business.
What do you mean by outbound calls? What does that mean? Calling someone directly?
Calling someone directly, yeah. Skip tracing, finding phone numbers and making direct phone calls out to them.
And you're saying that did work or didn't work or what was the status of that?
It did work. It's something that I was going to say that's one that we've seen hold strong throughout, from the day that we started investing and we were always tracking those metrics to even, I don't know, was the call Thursday, Jason, that we were all on and they're all saying, reporting their metrics and their outbound calls are pulling everyone's at home right now, right? But it's pulling in it, and that's really stayed steady and consistent. And Jason and I traveled to a lot of cities, and the guys that we say, who in here is closing a couple deals a month, and then we say who's making outbound calls, it's the same people. And so that to me, like I said, those avenues, I don't feel they change at all. There may be a little bit of variance, but right now, being on the phone, everybody's at home.
What are some of the best practices for the content? I mean, what are you saying? Because it seems like you could easily say the wrong thing and never land any deals. But if you know what you're doing and what to say and what that content should be, you could be quite successful. So could you share some of the best practices with us?
I think for me, it's remembering, the point of the conversation to me the goal of the conversation, of the homeowner conversation, is to set an appointment to come to the house. So remember that it's not to sell them. It's not to do anything other than to set the appointment to come to the house. So focus around that. The other thing I could say is just be genuine. Just be yourself and see what you can do to help. If you really are genuinely trying to help them, they will see that. So Rachel and I don't buy every house. If it's better for the customer to rehab the house themselves, I'll tell them that. But most of the time, I know that they may not have the money to fix it up, or they may not have the time to deal with contractors. But if you approach it from a standpoint of genuinely trying to help and serve and improve their position, they will see that, and it oftentimes will end up in you being able to do the deal. I think, like I said too, it just being who you are. You don't have to be, especially if you're new, you don't have to be the super smart, seasoned real estate investor. Just be yourself and have a conversation. For whatever reason, when it becomes real estate, we get ourselves nervous and we get ourselves, worked up. If we're going to look at a car, we wouldn't do that. I don't know why we do it with houses, but we do. I've done it. We've all done it. But I would say just, approach it from a place of, what can I do to help this person? And one other big key that I will give you. One of the first sales trainings that I went through from Brian Tracy, like probably back in 2001 or 2002, he said, imagine that there's a light bulb hanging in between you and the prospect. And every time the prospect is talking, the light's on them. And every time you're talking, the light's on you. You want the light on them as much as possible. And how do you do that? You do that by asking good questions. You don't do it by talking about yourself. And that was a big one for me, because I really wanted to say, well, I'm your best choice, and I've done a bunch of deals, and I'm this great and look at me, look at me. When really the greatest salespeople on earth aren't salespeople at all. That they're really good at asking questions. They're really good at interviewing the prospect and letting them talk. The funny part is, the more you let them talk, the more they'll like you. It's the craziest thing on earth, but it's the way that it works.
Are there any other worst practices that you can share with us? I mean, mistakes that you see people make over and over again?
I would say that when leaving a message, leave a very general message. This is something that I commonly see where people say, hey, this is Rachel Schneider. I'm calling you about your home in foreclosure, or the home that you got through probate. And they give all these details over the phone. Well, you already told them why you were calling, and you gave them the ability to make a decision that they don't want to talk to you, right? Where if I say, hey, it's Rachel, give me a call back. I'll be available for the next couple of hours and my phone number. I didn't tell them why I'm calling, right? But I'm not hiding anything from them. I will be available for a couple hours and I want to talk to them. Just keep it short and sweet, because if I can build rapport with them and have an actual conversation with them, then I can tell them and get more into that. But leaving all of that over information on a voicemail lets them make the decision right then and there whether they want to talk to you or not. And most of them are going to say no, they don't want to talk to you because they don't know who you are.
So, Rachel, are you saying that if you leave a voicemail, you may not even tell them why you're calling? You just say who you are and call me back without really saying this is about your house or your property or anything like that?
Yeah. Very casual, like I'd be leaving Jason a voicemail. Hey, Jason, it's me. Call me back whenever you get a minute, and here's my number.
We're talking about sales techniques and communication techniques. Are there any books that you guys recommend or that have been influential to you that have helped you with your success?
Lots. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, one of the original best. How to Sell Anything to Anybody from Joe Girard. I think he's in the Guinness Books of World Records for selling the most cars ever in the history of the world or something. Tony Robbins did a good audio series called Mastering Influence. It was really, really good. Brian Tracy, it's really old. It's probably 20 years old, but you can probably still find it. The Psychology of Selling. There's 3 or 4 or 5 that I think are really, really good for a strong foundation.
What about you, Rachel? Do you have any recommendations?
I would say on the sales techniques, I mean, all of the ones that Jason just mentioned, I think a book that becomes one of my, I wouldn't say my favorite because I like so many for other reasons, but when I'm really trying to get myself in that mode, which I think so many people are like this right now because we've all been at home for so long, but where I really want to think big, dream big and create those kind of master plans of like, how am I going to level up? How are we going to turn this year to be, where I wonder what I did last year, is 10X by Grant Cardone. That's just one that always kind of, there's something in it. And I'm sure some of it is the tonality in his voice, but it just kind of, it fires me up a little bit. And it makes me think like, if we've got an event or if we're working on something and this is my goal, it makes me come back and look at it in a different light and say, am I making this big enough, right? Are we really pushing this, or is this just what we know we can do? And so that's a book that helps me a lot, that I read at least once every single year.
You brought it up that we're all sitting at home. We, depending on where you are in the country, there's stay-at-home orders, quarantine orders, that type of thing. Jason, you said the goal is to get into the house, to get someone to say, hey, come on over and look at the house. How are you conducting business now?
It's a great question. I think resourcefulness and adaptation. I mean, look at the companies that are thriving and successful, that they adapt and they pivot, like Rachel said at the beginning of the call. Look at Blockbuster and look at Netflix. Blockbuster's out of business. Netflix is thriving. Blockbuster had the chance to buy Netflix and they didn't, because they didn't see where things were going. They didn't adapt and change. So what's a way that we can do a homeowner appointment without physically being there? These, right? iPhone. We can FaceTime. Now, I'm not saying I recommend buying houses strictly via FaceTime, because there's just some things that you can't see. However, we can do a walkthrough via FaceTime. We can send a contract via DocuSign, and we can put in our contract subject to final physical walkthrough. But we can still negotiate. We can still see the property. We can still tie it up under contract. We can still do all of those things and put the contingency in there that, final walkthrough by this date when things start to get a little bit better. Man, what if you just focus the next 60 days on putting as many properties as you possibly can under contract, so that when things do start to open up and get a little bit better and we can go back out into society, you've got 5, 10, 15, 20 houses that are tied up with contracts, and you get to go walk through them and decide which ones you want. That'd be a pretty cool position to be in 60 days from now.
As you do this and tie properties up under contract, how are you pricing them? Because we don't know yet just how deep this recession is going to get and what it's going to do to the valuations of single family real estate.
Conservative is where we have always been. I think coming from the market that we got introduced into investing in, is it was changing quickly. Property values were dropping, and so we've always leaned towards conservative. In an uncertain market, what's worst case here, right? So I start looking at the lowest comps. What have the lowest comps in the area been selling at? Because even under improved, so my home would be far superior to theirs. And that's kind of what I start basing my numbers off of. Another thing to do is to put a contingency in the contract that the numbers will be reviewed and reworked once we see, prior to closing, to make sure that COVID hasn't majorly impacted the value of that actual property. And I would explain it to my homeowners as, my intent is not to go down on the numbers at all, to make any types of changes like that. But if we can't close for 3 months from now and there is something major that changes, I want to be protected. I want you to be protected. And this is a way for us to both be protected in this situation. Because that could happen, right? We don't know where things are going to be. I know some places are going to open and other places are extending until Memorial Weekend. So I think that you have to protect yourself, but looking at the numbers, it's that very low after repair value or as is value that you're determining. And if it doesn't work, don't do the deal. Sometimes I see people and we're forcing those deals to happen. And then those are the ones we end up making pennies. If you've never done a full gut rehab, don't buy one right now, because you're going to mess up the rehab, because rehabs never, very few people does every rehab come in exactly how it's supposed to. So play it smart. If it is a shaky deal and it's just tight, what would it be to not make it tight? Do you drop it $5,000? Do you drop it 10? And if that doesn't work, move on to the next deal, because this isn't the market that you want to get in a situation where you bought for more than you should have.
Can you talk a little bit about the area, the state, the community in which you're investing? And are you staying in that area? And are you like the big fish in the small pond, or are you expanding out to other areas? I'm curious what your logistics are.
We've always done our single family stuff pretty locally here. We invested in 5 counties within an hour radius. So our rule was always a 1 hour radius from where we're at. I don't want to work on a rehab that's 2 hours away. So for us, that was always our business model. Our hard money lending stuff, we do all over the country. So we're familiar with markets from California to Baltimore. That's never really been a fear for us. Rachel is a genius at evaluating property. So she can make a decision pretty much regardless of where the property is, based on the MLS, based on the comps in the area. I coach guys that invest in 5-6 different states. For us, it wasn't part of our business vision. It wasn't something that we personally wanted to do. I've helped other people build it, but for us, we've always stayed local. We've done some multifamily stuff out of state and out of the area with actually students of ours that have found some really killer apartment deals. Mm-hmm. And they put the deal together. They brought it to us. We did the funding. We partnered on it. Those have been really, really awesome deals that are outside of our market. So for whatever reason, with the single family flips, we've stayed local. Everything else, we've kind of just gone where the deal took us.
Yeah. In St. Louis, we've got a ton of real estate investors here. It seems like it would be small, but in all reality, I mean, we've got a lot of big heavy hitters in our local market, but we've always worked under that. There's more than enough out there for all of us.
Let's talk about your hard money lending, because I know that part of the service you offer to your students is you loan out hard money for them to do their deals. What do you see happening to that right now? Is the hard money that you've lent out safe? And are you sleeping well at night, or are you a little bit worried?
I'm not worried on anything that we have out there right now, because we are very strategic in it. I think because we've seen a recession before, we know what happens when there's an uncertain market. So, you could be the most secure borrower out there for us, and we won't extend you more than 2 deals at one time, because that's a way that people get themselves in trouble. You'd be real seasoned, and we've done a lot of deals with you if we lend you over 70% of the ARV. We like you to always have some skin in the game where you're financially invested along with us. So I don't feel nervous about anything that we have out. I've done a review of everything, and actually we've had some that have sold first weekend on the market. Going forward, we will start to be a little bit more secure as far as maybe cross-collateralizing with something that you've got free and clear, just to reduce our risk. There are so many people who are not lending at all right now, mostly private funders, right? A lot of them have pulled their money out and aren't pushing anything out. And some that are out there are offering, they want 50% of the profit. So we're not getting crazy like that. But we're definitely making sure that we keep those percentages that we're lending off of very, very low right now.
And I want to talk about the future, because here we are in the middle of a quarantine, coronavirus, that will change at some point. Yeah. And I know, Rachel, you had expressed excitement as to what you foresee. Talk about that. How is your business going to change? And what do you see? And I'd like both of you to answer this separately. What do you see on the horizon?
For me, Rachel and I have made more money in a shifting market than we ever made in a stable market. So I'm super excited. My financial mentor, who has assets into the hundreds of millions of dollars, he is chomping at he's ridiculously excited right now. And I want everybody to understand this. I am not happy to see people suffering. I am not happy that 1 out of 3 restaurants are probably going to go out of business. I'm not happy. That sucks. It's horrible. I don't like anything about it. And I wish it wasn't happening. The reality of the situation is I can't control how those people ran their businesses, and I can't control what happened. And so I just want to preface that, because I don't want to sound like this guy that I'm excited to capitalize off other people's loss. That's not it at all. The reality of the situation is a lot of businesses are going to go out of business. That's just the way that it is. So there's going to be people who own strip malls that 50% of their tenants are now out of business. Now they own a non-performing strip mall, and guess what? They can't pay the bank. So there's going to be opportunities to buy commercial space at ridiculous prices. There are apartment buildings right now where 50 and 60% of the tenants aren't paying their rent. We're going to have opportunities to buy apartment buildings, in my opinion, cheaper than we ever have in the last 5-10 years. We're going to have the opportunity, like Rachel mentioned. I have a guy that was in my network. He's not a student, but he told me he had 28 Airbnbs that he had bought over the last couple of years, and every single one of them is vacant right now. Try to tell these guys, don't leverage this stuff. Don't do debt like that. I'm just not a big fan of leveraging stuff to 95%. It all looked great on paper, and I was all happy about it, but one small shift, and now these guys can't pay their bills. It's unfortunate, but there's going to be a lot of opportunity for people who pay attention for the next 6 months to a year to build wealth in a way that we haven't seen in a lot of years. Yeah. For me, best time in a long time to jump into real estate.
Yeah. Rachel, what about you?
Well, and I agree with Jason from an overall market standpoint, right? The opportunity that'll be out there. I think for us personally in our business, the investment side, absolutely. But even our, the other big side of our business is coaching and education. And I have wanted to be working on a lot of new product and just virtual trainings and trying new different things, and being so busy with live events and then the other businesses that we own and operate, I haven't had that time. Well, now I've got more time than I've ever had before. And so I've been subbing that time up to kind of create product and content and start being able to deliver that virtually. We just did a 3-day class on short sales, and it was supposed to be live, but we had to end up canceling it. And so for us, I see that as being such a benefit because we'll be able to reach so more, which for the short sale thing, it's personal to me because that's how we got and started in real estate investing, right? And I saw all of those families and all of those people that we really helped get out of bad situations, and non-essential workers are going to be in a bad situation when this is all said and done, if they're not already. And I understand that there are relief and programs being offered to them. I feel as if they will not be for the majority. And if we can help educate people on this is how you work with the banks, this is how you do this, and they can then go and help all of these other families, kind of guide them through these really tough situations that they're in, like that's just serving on such a totally different level for us. And so I'm excited to have that time that we can start building that stuff and start delivering it virtually to people, and be able to really, impact our own personal lives, but really impact the other people's lives that are kind of struggling through these times.
Talk a little bit about your coaching, your training, and share our list with our listeners how they would get in touch with you to find out more.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity. Rachel and I never sought out to be educators. We never sought out to be coaches or have a real estate, to train other people. One of the guys that was in the original mastermind group that I was a student in, he was also a student. His name's Eric Lumberg. He owned Milwaukee REIA. And I didn't even know, like I said, what a REIA was. And Eric approached me. He's like, man, you guys closed 111 houses your first year. Would you come speak to my group and share with them how you did that? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I don't have a PowerPoint. I don't have a presentation. Like I can come teach. And so that's really where REI Blueprint was born. Was we started to educate ourselves after we jumped into the business, and everything that we found on the real estate investing side, it got you halfway there. It got you 3/4 of the way there. But the step-by-step, that's why we call it the blueprint. The step-by-step, what needs to be done today, what needs to be done tomorrow, the step-by-step of what needs to happen to make this business work was missing. And so Rachel, being the detail-oriented person, she's like, we need to create like a blueprint for this real estate investing business like we had for the mortgage business, like somebody that comes in completely off the street, a step-by-step guide to tell them what to do on a daily basis to be successful in this business. And that's what I feel like we created. That's what our 3-day events are. And now it's probably the most favorite thing that we do. I mean, we get to change people's lives. We had a couple on the phone the other day this is crazy, but said that you saved our marriage. We would not be married still if it wasn't for you guys and what you've done in our personal. I mean, it's like, what? I mean, it's just, it gives us the opportunity to serve on a completely different level and impact people's lives on a different level. So, you can find us on our Facebook page, REI Blueprint. You can go to reiblueprint.com. We throw a ton of free training and education on our Facebook page. Anything that we can do to help you in your journey, we'd love to help.
How do you guys split up the duties with the training?
But when it comes to a student, when it's a one-on-one situation, you have a primary coach. So it would be one or the other of us who we feel like is the best person to coach you. So we do some personality tests and really kind of get to know you first. And then we decide who is the better fit for you. Someone who really struggles with taking action and is very analytical, you would think automatically would be a good fit for me. But in reality, they need Jason's push, right? To get them to actually take action and stop analyzing everything to death. So we really dig deep to make sure that we get you with the right person. When it comes to our live events, we really speak on the areas that are our strengths. Jason does a lot on mindset because we're big believers that we can teach you all the mechanics, right? But if you don't have this right, you're never going to get that together. And so Jason does a lot with mindset. He does outbound calls live. He does a lot with the understanding the psychology of the seller. And I kind of get more into the weeds of the marketing and here is what the blueprint is and kind of get into the detail sides of things as we're walking through.
Jason, Rachel, as we wrap it up, do you have any advice for our listeners? Any final thoughts, advice? You've been through the Great Recession. Jason, you talked about your bankruptcy. I know your mortgage business collapsed and you tried to help people with short sales. That was successful for a while. And then after a bit of time, not so successful. What advice do you have for our listeners to get through this period?
I would say two things. Number one, get started. Number two, don't give up. Don't quit. But you got to get started. I'd rather you go the wrong way than go no way. I'd rather you get started and go the wrong direction than not start at all. The faster you realize you're going the wrong direction, the faster you can correct your course and go the right direction. But standing still gets us nowhere. And number two, don't give up. Don't quit. It's not always going to be easy. Money's not always going to fall from the sky. I mean, that's not the way that it works. But consistency makes up for stay consistent. Grind it out and try until you get the result that you set out to get, because I am so thankful every day that we didn't quit when times got tough, that we didn't throw in the towel when we got wiped out, that we didn't give up or quit, because Rachel and I run 6 or 7 businesses today. Several of them multi-million-dollar businesses. We work from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. 3 or 4 days a week. We work a 15 or 20 hour week work week, and we've taught hundreds of other people how to do the same thing. Nothing cooler than that. It's worth the sacrifice. It's worth the hard work. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's uncertain, but step out.
I would say, and kind of along the lines of what you were talking about, Jason, don't press the pause button right now. Keep hitting play. There are so many people that are saying, oh, we'll just wait and see. We'll just wait and see. We're going to blow right past you while you're waiting and seeing. This is the perfect opportunity for you to get all of your systems and all of your processes set up. This is the perfect opportunity for you to be pushing out all of the marketing because you've got the time to do it. Use the time that you were driving to and from work to push the marketing side out. Get on the phone with people. Everybody's home right now. Make mistakes. I want you to mess up 15 phone calls, right? Like, it's not my natural strength to be this amazing person on the phone for Jason. It's very natural. I mess up sometimes, right? That most of the time they don't even know you messed up. So that's the best part about it. But secondly, that's okay. That's how you learn, right? By the time you've made 50 outbound calls, you're going to be better than you were on your first 5. Record yourself, listen to yourself, get critiquing, but get on the phone. That is one thing that no one does. And it's such an incredible way to separate you from your competition. And so I just encourage you to don't be scared of making the mistake. Our biggest failures have been our best feedback. So do it.
Well, Rachel and Jason, I want to thank you for sharing your experience with us. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I appreciate your experience having gone through the last Great Recession, the way you've pivoted and changed your business along the way, and the fact that you're sharing that now with students and through your coaching and training, and also through this podcast. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. This was awesome. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.